Dr. Magdy Amer. Dr. Magdy Amer is a colleague at the French University in Egypt. He has more than 20 years of IT consulting and e-government in Canada and Egypt. He is currently the head of computer and communication department at the French University in Egypt, and we are very proud of having him with us.
Today I will speak about an innovation project that had a big impact in Egypt, and I'm hoping to have that this project will have an even greater impact. It's a project of automating the distribution of subsidized food using smartphones. I was the lead architect of the project. The research team, of course, was led by Dr. Ahmed Beach, the ex-minister of Development, and the team included Dr. Magdy Amer and Engineer Amanda. First of all, let's describe the manual system that exists. In this manual system, families that are eligible to receive help from the government had to present an application for the Ministry of Social Solidarity. If they are approved, then the ministry will calculate the quota that this family is eligible to receive, the price related, which depends on the financial level of the family. They will have to register this family with a specific distributor, what we call in Arabic al-Tamween. They have to register with a specific distributor. They cannot change it easily. And in this food distributor, you will have to keep a paper registry explaining where each monthly state the amount of food that each family obtains from them. And every 4 years or 5 years, the ministry had to re-evaluate the families, because some families may have their financial status may have changed and they are no longer eligible to receive this fund, and the system would be approved. The monthly cycle, the food distributor or the grocer goes to the Ministry of Social Solidarity, receives the amount of food that, the maximum amount of food that he may distribute without paying. Each family is allowed to go only once per month to receive the entire portion of food that is eligible to receive. They pay the merchant. At the end of the month, the merchant goes with his food to the ministry, shows them that he distributed this amount of food. He will get a replacement. He will give them the money that he collected during this month and retain the portion of money that represents his benefit from providing this service. This system suffered deeply from fraud. We had two major sources of fraud. The first one is that the merchant can easily fake entries in his book. He can claim that all the families came and received the entire portion of food. Also, he can fake the fact that this family receives the entire portion of food, because often many families, for example, goes and decide that they want sugar and tea, but they are not interested in getting the rice and so on. So this was the main source of fraud. The second one is the employees working in the ministry themselves. Because the system is paper-based, because the system is very difficult to track, they can easily fake families register fake families in the system and fake all the transactions that these families make, and at the end, all this money, all this food will get diverted to the black market. This motivated us to use technology to try to solve this problem. We decided that to implement this project successfully, we need to work in two phases. The first phase, let's just use smart cards to implement the system exactly the same way it is implemented, with all the business drawbacks and business rules that are placed that existed in the paper-based system. In the second phase, we wanted to improve the quality of service and to improve the business rules that exist in the system. This improvement can be done, for example, by allowing people to obtain their food from any subsidized food distributor. They should not be obliged to deal with only one food distributor, just because when this food distributor knows that this customer doesn't have alternative, he doesn't treat him in a good way. He may force him to take food product whose quality is not as good as it should be. The second thing is that we should be more flexible in the price list of offered to the families. Families with a much lower level of financial level may get food for almost for free, where families with much better food level, financial level will be able to obtain the service, but with a more appropriate price. For example, one of the strange things that we faced when implementing the system, Dr. Nazif himself, while he was the head of the Prime Minister, while he was the Prime Minister, had valid and acting he was receiving subsidized food, because in the Egyptian system, if you obtain subsidized food, we don't really check for whether you should continue receiving this financial aid or not. The third thing is that we should allow use this smart card as a means for distributing all financial aids provided to the Egyptian society. When I mean all the financial aid, I'm speaking about the field of health, education, gasoline, natural gas, and even in crisis management. For example, when we had the earthquake in Egypt a few years ago, if we had such means of providing customers with providing citizens with a very quick way with the financial aid that they needed, probably things would have been managed in a much better way. The third phase of the project is to use the smart card as an animal, in the sense that we shouldn't have to use a food distributor to provide the citizens with subsidized food. Instead, we should provide them with electronic money, and they should be capable of obtaining their food from any provider, from any supermarket. And the supermarket will take directly the electronic money from the card. The thing, one of the major criteria when designing the system is that we need to understand the infrastructure of Egypt. There are some villages in Egypt that doesn't have electricity. So we cannot say that this system will be implemented using fiber optics and PCs and so on. We need to use a system that is capable of working, whether it's online or offline. To implement the system, we decided to use smart cards because although that was another alternative that is much cheaper, which is what we call magnetic card, but because we knew that we are going to go to the level where the money will be actually placed on the smart card, the security was one of the big concerns. That's why we said that we are going to use a solution that is capable of scaling up to cover all our future phases. The merchant also was given a card. This card contains the list of all the families that are eligible to receive foods through this distributor, the quantities of the food that are eligible to receive, and the price list that they are using. The system allows two modes of operation. The first mode is the online mode, which will be used in major cities. In this online mode, when the family goes and buys the food, the transaction is automatically transferred to the server, central server, in the Ministry of Social Solidarity, and the record will be kept there. At the end of the month, all what the merchant needs to do is to go and he will have his record automatically calculated, showing the amount of food that he distributed and the money that he collected, and the cycle will be much easier to maintain. In the second phase, in the second mode of operation, which is the offline mode, in this mode, we cannot depend on the connectivity to be available in all locations, and in this case, the transaction will be stored on the merchant card itself. It will also be stored on the POS device as a backup. The merchant is supposed to go and place his card in a service provider center related to the Ministry of Social Solidarity, and to upload all the transactions on this card. At the end of the month, same cycle happens. He goes with his card. The ministry calculates the amount of food that is distributed, and he will get replacement for this amount. This mode of operation is used to cover areas with less connectivity, and also as a backup if for any reason the online system fails. One of the problems that we need to design the system so that it's capable of handling is the case of device failure and the case of card theft. In the case of when we are still implementing the first phase of the project, things are easy because all the citizens use only one service provider. So what will happen if both the merchant card and POS device fail and the transaction of the month is lost, is that we will ask the merchant to provide us with an estimation of the amount of food that he distributed during this month, and by collecting the data automatically from the cards of the citizen using the service of this merchant, we will be able to obtain the transaction of the previous month and use it to verify the claim of this merchant. Same thing in case of card theft. The citizen will be issued a new card will be issued to the citizen with a new card ID with the same information as the merchant when he is updating, uploading the information of the merchant card at the end of the month cycle. A new list will be updated on the merchant card, removing the old card that was stolen and installing the ID of the new card. So the worst case scenario that can happen in case of card theft is that only the food distributed during 1 month can be The first phase of the project was quite successful. In fact, we were able to save around 22% in the prototype that we implemented in the city of Suez. This motivated us to roll out the project in all of Egypt, which is a project that is currently being implemented by the only remaining, in fact, member of the team, which is Dr. Magdy Amer at the Ministry of Administrative Development. What we need to take care of during the planning of the next phases is that problems that were tackled easily in the first phase will become a little bit more difficult to deal with in the future phases. For example, the food distributed is no longer distributing a fixed amount of food, because the number of citizens that may decide to obtain their food from another food distributor is variable. We have tendency, for example, during holidays, Egyptians have tendency to go to their native villages, and they will have tendency to obtain their the subsidized food from these villages. We need to implement a dynamic model for food distribution, where we use more concept like resupply levels. We use data mining to understand the different pattern in food consumption of the Egyptian population during different seasons and during special holidays. The e-cash solution is something that needs to be implemented to fulfill the full potential of the system. When we implemented the first phase, what we were able to realize, in fact, is that forging signature of the families receiving the food subsidized was no longer possible, and that's why we saved 22%. But there is another problem happening, which is that families may reach an agreement with the food distributor, telling him that you are allowed to obtain the food that we are eligible to obtain for some other service. For example, it's quite common to see that there is an agreement that I will give you all the foods that I'm eligible to obtain, and obtain a few packets of cigarettes, for example. So the money that is supposed to go to feed family in need will go to a product that, in fact, endangers the health of this family. If we use an e-cash program, we will be able to provide the families with different kinds of benefits in regard to the amount of subsidy that they decide not to use. For example, if we decide not to use all the food subsidy that we are eligible to obtain, we can ask for some cash benefit in other programs. For example, the health program, where we may have a family member who needs more help in this area more than what the government is currently providing. And even the concept of providing the citizen with alternative products. For example, many families do not like the sugar provided, but are more interested in tea. So we may provide them with the ability to obtain different products to cover this cash difference in their other products that they see. Another problem, the problems that we dealt with easily in the first phase are becoming much more difficult to deal with in the future phases. For example, in the case of device failure, we don't have an easy means to verify the claim of the merchant. that's why we said that when a citizen is doing a transaction with a merchant, the merchant should store the transaction of the previous months that was stored on the citizen card on the merchant card. And when the merchant goes to upload the transaction on this merchant card, all these backup transactions should be stored should be also uploaded to the server of the municipality. This would be able to this model should be used to be able to verify claims of merchants who lost whose devices has failed, but also will be used to verify the transaction to be sure that there are no fake transactions being inserted in the system and fake claims of goods being requested by merchants who had the technology to fake transaction on their merchant cards. Another thing is that card theft now will become a major problem because the card contains the money. So, and because the system is not always online, we are using the offline model to cover regions with less connectivity. We do not have the means of directly verifying that the card is valid and is not stolen. So the best way of fighting, of reducing the amount of card theft is to use what we call hot lists, where a hot list of stolen cards will be distributed automatically on the merchant card, using some heuristic to distribute it only in the region near where the card has been stolen or has been used recently to reduce the amount of storage required on the merchant. The current status of the system is that we...
Sorry for interrupting you, miss. We're short of time a little bit.
Okay.
No, you can conclude.
Due to in the current phase of the system, we are almost in the final step of finishing phase, the first phase of the project. In implementing the future phases, due to the political changes in Egypt, it's more difficult right now to start a project or to start a phase in a governmental entity in Egypt because everybody knows that it's there for a short period and it does not want to start the project, an action that will have a long period of implementation or long and a complex system for implementing this project. That's why probably till the political problems of Egypt are resolved, the second and third phase of the project will be full. Thank you very much.
Dr. Magdy, thank you very much for this enriching presentation. If you have any question, please go ahead. We're pretty short of time, so just one question. That's it. No? Is this one? Okay, sorry.